The HX Collective explores the human experience through three main channels of life: work, relationships, and self. With raw, authentic conversations, the podcast investigates how challenges can become powerful teachers, leading to personal growth and deeper connections. Rooted in humanity centered design, each episode reflects a commitment to doing good and doing well, featuring diverse voices and generational perspectives. Expect gripping stories of struggle and success with thought provoking discussions and concrete tools and tactics that encourage you to rethink your relationship with distress, helping you to establish your full human experience. This is the HX Collective channel. Hello, friends, and welcome to the next episode of the HX Collective podcast. I could not be more excited for this conversation today because we're going to talk about something that I know very little to near nothing about, which is the revolution that we're seeing in the era of AI and all things technology. But we're in good hands, my friends, because the person who is my guest today comes to the embrace of all things technology and AI, not with a passive, I guess, if I have to accept it. No, she runs front of the line, always on not only the cutting edge, but the bleeding edge of innovation and what's new. And I couldn't be more thrilled to have my great friend Nahel Gandhi talk to us about the intersection of AI and technology and what that means to the human experience and how this vehicle actually can help us elevate human flourishing. So, with that, I welcome Nahal. Hello, my friend. Welcome to the show. I am so happy you said yes. And in fairness to you and to our audience, we originally were going to have a conversation today that was going to be all focused on what it means to have friendships and to have a sense of community after the age of 50, which incidentally we are going to do. But it occurred to me as as I was getting ready for this podcast, that we would have a real opportunity for us to connect on a subject matter that is so indigenous to your expertise as a tech strategist, as an innovator in residence, and as somebody who just absolutely embraces the human side of things that often make a lot of people scared. So, as we step into today's conversation and really looking at the intersection of where AI and technology are impacting the human experience, can you start by introducing yourself to our audience, get a little bit of context for how you come into this conversation, and frankly, how it is that you're able to embrace things that really scare the bejeebies out of most people?
Thank you so much for having me, Debbie. You're always such a amazing cheerleader, such an amazing human being to start with. And I'm so glad that we are friends. I just want to start off the conversation with I am blessed to have a friend like Debbie and the whole South Loop gang that you're going to meet eventually. Nehal Gandhi, I run a technology firm based out of Chicago, been doing it for 9 years now. We do everything from strategy, development work. I have a team in India that does development to deployment, change management, which is what we're going to talk a lot about, is how not to be scared of these things. And then on top of all that, what we very much focus on is the transformation of the human being, the human mind, and how do you take it in your everyday process and make it a part of it instead of being scared of it. So that's what my company does. The company's name is Parinamas. I've been in the tech space for 25 years now, and I've been friends with you for almost 20 years now.
It's amazing. Well, it's so funny because you all should know as the audience, and again, the friendship, it really preceded this revelation that I had, and I've told the story with a couple of other friends of ours that have been on the podcast, that it really occurred to me as an epiphany while we were standing in my farmhouse in my kitchen, which is also known as a dance floor. And I started to look around and we were there as, a group of girlfriends. What we shared was our shared journey of motherhood. We've got children that are all relatively the same age. So we were experiencing those milestones of being working moms and having, this experience of raising kids. And then it dawned on me, I'm like, oh my gosh, I am looking upon the sea of greatness, the sea of badassness that is in front of us, and realizing what gifts each of my friends had in their respective areas. And I will tell you that in the land or the village where Nehal Gandhi is present, not only does she have this incredible confidence and aura and presence and jubilance and adventure, she's also known as tech support. I'm going to tell you, she is not afraid She is not afraid of the iPhone update. She is not afraid of knowing how to put things on Bluetooth. She is not afraid of knowing how to do AirDrop. I mean, these are things that I've learned as a result of my friendship with you. So, knowing that is also in our experience and our skill set, this is such a great conversation to have, and knowing what an impact the work you're doing at your firm and the work and the wisdom you're about to share with our audience today. So, I want to begin with just putting some context around the nature of how we think about AI, how we think about technology, and its intersection with the human experience. Because I dare say so many people are afraid that this is going to take over and that the humans are no longer going to matter. Share with us why that's just such a myth, and why do these things come together in the spirit of human experience and human flourishing?
So let me give you a little history from where I come from and what I think of in terms of technology or the information highway we are on. If you think about back in the days when if you and I were in school and we needed to do a research, we had to go to a library, get a book, the book was out, etc. Today, you have the internet that helps you, and every part of the world can actually go to the internet and get research done. Add to it one more layer, which is AI. Now you have these large language models, which is nothing but an amalgamation of data from across the world. And now you can have that in everyone's hand. You literally have access to information that would take millions of days, if not years, to get that. Today, you have it on your fingertip. So if I look at it, I feel like AI is democratizing the world. It is really giving everyone the chance of being in power of the knowledge. So if you look at it in that lens, you actually think of it as every human can be super productive, no matter which part of the world you are, whether it is India, Burma, China, US, everyone has the same access to it. So now you've really got data on your fingertips, you've really got information, you don't have to wait for it. It is right there for you. So if you just put that in perspective, you are now really democratizing the world in a way that has never happened before. Never before have we had so much data at our fingertips.
Well, and I think you said something important, and I hadn't considered it until right now. It's this experience of being human and having access, and the idea of leveling the playing field, that while our capacities to have lived experience, our capacities to have access to education, our experiences to be born with a certain innate IQ or intelligence. In a lot of ways, what I'm hearing you say is that this current era of AI in particular, in its democratizing, in the leveling of the playing field, really is about elevating the human experience through access.
100%. I couldn't have said it better just the way you said it, right? Now we all have, and now add to it the human creative, the human experience. You ask it very different experiences than I have had, and you ask different questions. You will get something that is catered to you, specific to where you're from and what comes to you. So the creative of the human mind, the creativity of our existence becomes so much more richer because where we are and what we are doing with technology.
Okay, again, second aha. One of the when we first you introduced, in fact, Nahal has this great introduction to AI, and she was kind enough to give this webinar to my team. And one of the things I recall from that workshop was this construct of prompt engineering. But you just said something that is so important. Like, the human prompt is still a part of the equation. So, as a human being, what I prompt AI to give me is going to tailor the experience that I come back. So the human isn't removed from the equation. In fact, it's the engineer of the start of an experience.
Because I think is this like again, I go back to this library analogy. A library is great, but if you don't have the question to ask a library, if you don't have research to be asked of the data that sits out there, what have you achieved? Nothing. So all that AI is all this set of data that exists on your fingertips. But if you don't have an ask, if you are not creative to do something, it's a waste. So you are quintessentially the starting point of AI. And without the human, it means nothing.
Yeah, that's so important. I work a lot with clients in the legal industry, and one of the big questions around AI is, AI can perform a lot of those basic research functions that a human being used to have to do on a more manual or on a more person-centric basis. And the fear is that people are going to simply rely on the technology and that the need for a human being is reduced, some are making arguments that there's never been a more important time for a human being to be connected to data. And so when you think about the debate of technology replacing humans versus there's never been a time that the human being is going to be more important, where would you land on that debate?
So, again, a little bit of history, right? I think the industrial era that we came across, we became a line on the industrial era. Like there's a line, and we became a part of that line in the industrial era. As technology is moving, we are going to become more human in a lot of ways, in the sense we are not a part of the line of the manufacturing. We are not required to do a lot of the mundane, if you may. We are now growing to a part where a mundane, everything that's mundane, everything that's not wanting for the human to do, or humans don't want to do it, that is going to be taken over by technology, by AI, by bots, by you name it, it'll be taken over. But the creative, the acting, the human part of it becomes more and more important. You and I are going to be doing a lot more social that we never had time to. Things that, I mean, driving, right? Simple example. If I love driving, I am going to drive. But if it is driving from point A to point B, I want an autonomous car to drive because it's mundane. It's something that humans don't need to do. They're going to give away that mundane, if that makes sense. But they are going to be more involved in tasks that are making us happy, that are more creative, that are more part of being that social human aspect. I don't think that goes away. I think that is more and more going to become our DNA. And we are going to give away those habits of being a part of that industrial era, if that makes sense.
It does. You know what? I hadn't thought about that construct of mundane, and I loved what you just said, that this idea of if we can begin to see the value that is generated to remove the things that are not central to the human experience, like the mundane is not central to flourishing. Mundane is maybe the distraction or the productivity of doing mundane is now the capacity is freed in a way we don't even know what's possible.
We have grown in this era where busyness somehow is rewarded. Busyness is somehow, oh, what did I do? I spent 6 hours replying to emails, 5 hours sending someone, hey, coordinating between a meeting. When am I going to have a meeting? And between your schedule and mine, imagine all of that goes away. Imagine hours of your time of scheduling, hours of your time meeting, hours of your time spending on email goes away. How much more productive can you be as a human?
So true. Yeah, I mean, right, and I don't think even our concept of time, one of the I think one of the impediments to elevating human flourishing is just that it's time. And I think a lot of us often feel like we're in that perpetual state that I don't have enough time. And when you look at some of those mundane things, you're bringing to light a lot of the benefits that maybe once this era starts to normalize, we may find ourselves with capacity that we hadn't considered.
Right. And of course, with that capacity, people like you will take it and run with it and be more productive and do something fantastic for humanity. And there's going to be destruction. Every technology has a dichotomy that it comes with. People will use it for good and people will use it for bad. So, yeah, I get a lot of argument. You'll have more destruction. Well, that has been every single technology revolution that we've been part of. But I feel like I have a lot of faith in humanity. We will use it for the better of humanity, is my true belief in the next 10 to 15 years.
Given that you are the earliest of the early adopter in a technology adoption life cycle, thinking about a time and I'm almost maybe looking for, an era when, we were both productive in the workforce when email came onto the scene, and we were, I am older than Nahel for sure, you should know this, but I can tell you that I remember being working in a company, and we got Lotus Notes was our first email system, and it was just like every administrative assistant was so concerned that he or she were gonna be placed out of a job because all the energy doing a physical typewriting and the, mimeograph for copying, And just that feeling of like, "Oh, the sky," the world is ending as I know it, and yet when you look at our current workforce, like, there could be no more important professionals in our world than our administrative support teams. They're using technology for the betterment of efficiency, effectiveness, driving, more positive outcomes. But can you speak to this just in its contrast? Because I think every time something new occurs, we forget where we've already come from. So when you think about your experience of that, walk us through kind of normalize where we are right now, because it does feel pretty freaky.
To normalize, like, I think we've done this many, many times in our lives, but like you said, we forget, right? We've gone from a carriage to a car, we've gone car to an autonomous car to parallel parking cars. We've done this. We've gone from our heavy, thick laptops to skinny laptops to doing most of the work on phones. You and I probably do 90% of our jobs on the phone. We have been through this revolution many, many times. AI is yet another big one for it. And again, back to normalizing a little bit of it, right? We did when we got calculators. No one will need somebody to do math for them, or no one need to learn math if you have a calculator. Not true. From calculators, we went to computers. We will never need humans once we have computers. Not true. We have come to AI and it's the same thing. And if you think of the revolution, what has happened with AI, last 30 to 40 years, we have digitized a lot of our data. And a lot of our data now exists in a form of something you can click on and get through, right? It's not paper, it's not something. So AI has done nothing but taken. Okay, another fact is, you take a guess, how many variables can a human mind work on at the same time?
Well, I would say on my best days, I like to think I can spin 5 plates. On my worst days, barely can get 1.
So human minds start degrading after seven variables in our minds. And if you think about the data points we have to think of when you're thinking of the smallest task, it has become innumerous. The amount of data that sits for making one decision has become so high that we need certain assistants. We've had calculators as assistants. When you try to multiply 7 digits by 7 digits, human minds are not good at it. There are few who can do it. I'm not one of those. So those tools were created for us to do those 7 digit multiplications. Now, when you have millions of variables, if I'm going from here to O'Hare, I want to know what the traffic is. I want to know what the weather is. There are so many variables that without those components, I would not be able to make the best decision to get somewhere, right? So as data grows, as the compute powers grow, we need some sort of an artificial decisions made on our behalf to say, Nehal, for you to go from here to O'Hare, this is your best path. Based on traffic patterns, based on X, Y, and Z. Those are these assistants we are getting amplified because of the data that has we have created over the time. And hence the need for AI has happened so much, right? And instead of fearing it, use it as a decision enabler, as a decision. You don't have to make the decision. Like I said, most of these things you don't need to make a decision. Let them make it for you because it's mundane. From here to ahead, how I get there, I don't need to set 20 minutes and with a map. It's mundane. Somebody gives it to me in seconds. Let's use it. And that's the way to look at these new tools that are happening.
Yeah, I think that's great. Well, you mentioned in your opener talking about change management, that so much of adoption for anything new, in this case, in your case, you are giving clients the ability to have strategies that then result in adoption of a new innovation, a new piece of technology. How is the change management piece fit in when you're working at scale? So there's a personal change management, but walk us through some of the ways that change management can also lead to favorable human experience, or people are buying in, that they're getting it, that they're not afraid. Walk us through that.
So you know this better than I because you work with the human and the human mind, and you work very close to that aspect of the humanity. Humans want to be in charge. Humans want to believe it's their idea. Humans want to believe it is easy. Those some of the aspects of easy, it is theirs, they own it, it is coming from them. Those are some of the main core elements when you do change management. And that's where we focus on. We take them, we never go and say, this is the new stuff, do this, right? We take them through the journey from the very beginning. Hey, listen, how does this process work? What is the worst thing about this process? What do you hate about this process? What doesn't work? Can I watch and see and learn? Once you become part of that conversation, you become a part of their process, you become a part of their everyday, their pain points. When you hear them, they feel they're involved in this change. They believe you heard them, you understood where the points pain is coming from. When you start from that much of the process in the very beginning, then while you're putting this technology together, whatever it is, when you're developing it, you bring them along too. What do you think of this? So we call that design review in our tech world. We like bringing them along to say, does this work? Every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, we go in and say, does this work? They're like, no, this doesn't work. Why does this not work? Constant conversation, constant communication, constant them involved in the process is the most easiest way to do change transformation in an organization. Having said that, having through that process, you have to know that change is not easy for everyone in an organization. Before we start any large change like that, we tell the C suite, we tell the board, you're going to have 20 to 25% attrition because some people just won't come along the journey. And you know this, it's just impossible to get 100% change management in an organization. So you go with some realistic thoughts as well. It's like, yes, you're going to bring them along. Yes, you're going to, handhold them through the process. But the reality is you will have some attrition because not everybody is part of the change or wants to be part of that change.
So I do appreciate that when you are describing that experience, like, we need to have realistic expectations. Just because you have a change management process does not indeed mean that all the human beings are going to join you and come along. So I think there's a certain reality. When you think about the clients you've worked with, particularly in the, say within the last year or two, who seem to have a high willingness, cultures that are willing to embrace change, that also includes the embracing of technology, just, changes or AI or whatever it may be. Like, when it works, what are some of the things you've observed that have helped your clients really thrive, even in the midst of a lot of change and disruption?
Yeah, I think when it has worked, 100%, I would say communication. Communication has been like the number one thing that has to come through. And it's not just one, we're doing this and then big announcement and it's over. No, it's this consistent communication. It's the complete buy-in from the C-suite. They're on the C-suite, if you have 10, 12 people, if there are some naysayers, if there is some negative, you're not going to get through the process as easily. It can happen, but it's not the easiest. So you need a good 80, 90% buy-in at the C-suite. You need constant communication from everywhere. You need consistent communication. It's not like the CEO is saying we are doing this, and then when it comes to the CFO, he's like, no, no, we're only doing ERP. It has to be consistent communication across the board. It requires a lot of letting people ask all sorts of questions and being honest about answering them, really honest about answering those questions. Am I losing my job? Am I going to be not needed? Anything that they feel they are not being heard, you're going to have obstacles. Your best way is to have an open door conversation about this is true, this is happening, this is how we're going to make it happen. That has worked. The other thing that has really helped us when we are out there talking about their processes, not and no jargons. That is number one thing I've learned. No jargons, no using big words, no using large language models and autonomy. All that goes out. The simple words that people understand, simple things that they don't get afraid of, and simply again, just saying it 10 times over has been like the power of it all. And just when I've seen companies that have done really well, the CEO is on the floor at lunchtime talking without his suit, without his jacket, and just embracing any conversations people want to have. Those have been our success stories over and over again.
I love it. I heard an old adage years ago when the people were talking about change is that human beings inherently don't resist change. We resist being changed. And that's what I'm taking away from what you're saying is that if we can allow that communication to bring people along and we leave space for the dialogue and the discord and the challenging, that in and of itself creates that spirit of I'm involved. It's not happening to me, it's happening with me, and that distinction is what I'm hearing. Well, I want to shift gears now and think a little bit about the role that you are playing as a woman in technology, and knowing that, there are certainly lots of data and a lot of studies about professions that don't have a high representation of women. and further to that, high representation of women of color. And so talk a little bit about your personal journey, Nihal, because I think so much of the arc of where you've come from, how you've ended up in this field. I think if there are women, particularly young women that are listening who might have a bend towards the sciences and math and made and technology, tell a little bit about your personal story and what it's like to be a change agent as a woman in technology.
Yeah, so 100%. Happy to talk about the journey. As you know this, I work in Dubai, I worked in Italy, I worked in very different alpha male societies. And everywhere where I worked, I learned a very important lesson from how to be regional. You can be global, but how do the locals think? You have to be very aware. I'll give an example. I was doing a big presentation in Dubai, trying to get them to fund a project we were working on. We were asking for $36 million. It wasn't a small project either. And I was in a room full of male, Arabic male, in their whole outfits, and they all refused to look at me. And I'm sitting there just panicked, like just wondering why is no one talking to me. I'm like, shit, this is not happening, blah blah blah. And I'm just panicked through this whole presentation. And I went through the presentation. I got the money, which was crazy. But then at the end of it, nice gentleman, I was like, hey, what happened? Like, why was no one looking at me? Why was no one talking to me? They're like, that's considered rude. If we stare at you, if we look at you in our culture, that's being very abusive towards you, and we don't want to come off insensitive asking you questions. And I never thought of it, Debbie. I never thought that looking at me or asking me a question in that part of the world is considered rude or not polite. Lesson learned. Next time I put a male up there, I sat down and I let them ask him questions and I answered in the background because that was a part of the culture. So, one of the things that I've learned through my journey in technology or working in many countries is that learn local cues, learn what is important. You cannot change the world overnight. You have to respect where you're at, you have to respect who you're talking to, you have to respect the culture you're in, whether it's Italy, whether it's the US, whether it is over there. And yes, it's tough being a woman of color. I'll tell you, I'll talk about the positive as well. Like the positive is that when people see a brown girl, an Indian girl, they think she's smart. It just comes as a part of the territory. They never think of a brown woman to be stupid, which is worked in my favor. But when it comes to getting business, they don't think you can do business. They don't think you can handle a account. They don't think you can help them. And it is also a little threatening when a woman knows more than you, when a woman can outshine you in a room, when a woman can teach you what LLMs are and what a algorithm is, and it bothers them. So you learn those lessons and you learn to, again, how you communicate, what are the tones you use, how do you talk to people. All that becomes very, very important. Running this business for 9 years, I've realized how many times not to talk in a room, as many times I talk in the room, because it's a little tango that you do in the boardroom and you have to figure out who's on your side and who's not. It is also interesting, a lot of women will not give you business because they don't want to look biased towards a woman. So, lots of small tricks you learn, but the idea is read the room, learn to communicate, learn the art of it. It is not easy. It will never be easy for a woman. It will never be easy for a colored woman. It will never be easy for anyone unless they know how to sell. And it's not a bro club that you show up, you talk about your alumni, and you get business. It is extremely difficult, but there is fine art. You've learned it, Debbie. I'm sure you have a lot of similar stories to talk the way I talk about that. But those are the fine art that every woman has learned, whether you're in a job, whether you're in a career, whether you're in research, or whether you're running your own something.
Now, one of the things I know to be true about you, and thank you for saying that as well, I think that there is what I've appreciated and why one of the many reasons why you've been so successful is I think you always start from a foundation of curiosity. You're always wanting to understand where another person is coming from. I think the second thing I observe about you is you're not a judgmental person. If you don't try to, shame or see difference from the vantage point of being outraged. There's a certain sense of acceptance and respect. I think there's a really strong sense of respect and honor. I also think that you know how to go with the flow. Like you're not staying in, not you don't swirl in when things are disconnected. You look for what's working. And I think again, that's a lot of what technology is about too. Like technology doesn't spend time, looking into itself saying, wow, you were really stupid. You're really buggy. You're really like, no, it's like we just need to get, a viable option and moving forward and then know that you're going to iterate, you're going to do continuous improvement. And I think so much of your leadership, and I think it's important for men and women to take that lesson is that learning how to iterate on the fly without getting stuck in elements of gender bias or norms or expectations, that's a real superpower, and it's one that I see you model often.
Thank you. But yeah, you're 100% on the dot. It's like, I went into a meeting, this didn't work. Why didn't it work? Figure it out. Go to the next one. Okay, next, we're going to fix this. We're going to put a white male in instead of me and to talk about this. Works. So yeah, thank you for saying that.
You're welcome. Well, as we begin to wrap our conversation for today, I want to talk a little bit about actions. And this is again for our general audience, men and women. And as we're thinking about the intersection of how our technological lives and our human experience, how those things are intersecting, looking for some practical guidance. If I wanted to become more educated in this arena so I wouldn't be so afraid, or if I wanted to see how I could differentiate myself in a way that would maybe actually help me stand out because I have the speed of the mundane is being handled by the machines. What are some practical tips that you might be able to offer us? And I always like to say 3 things in 30 days, but if you've got 2 things in 10 days or 5 things in 15 minutes, like whatever it may be. What are some practical points of advice you would give us in how we can really elevate our own hope and positivity as human beings in spite of our fear and anxiety associated with technology and change?
Like you said, it's all about pivoting, trying, pivoting, trying. I would spend 15 minutes a day trying a tool, whether it is ChatGPT, whether it's Gemini, whatever you hear of, whatever new comes to your mind. And you need friends like me, happy to send you more tools every single day. Right now, Nano Banana is a hot big thing. Whether it's just trying stupid images or creating stupid videos, doesn't matter. Have that dexterity for those tools. Just create those dexterity with those tools because they're going to help you learn what didn't work, how do you prompt better, what did I not ask, what did I have to ask 3 times. That that muscle memory is going to help you in every aspect of your life. Keep trying new tools. I love certain tools. Right now Claude is doing very well. I would love for you to try Nano Banana tool creation. It creates images and videos. It's a lot of fun. Some AI assistant. I use Workmate, which does all my meeting invites for me. You add them to your email and they connect and they create your meeting invites. So that's another very practical, very good. I don't know if you've tried Read AI, where it gives you the summary of your meetings and it just summarizes your meetings. It comes to your meetings, it summarizes it, tells you all the details. So again, any tool out there that you hear from someone, try something. 15 minutes a day, that memory will become enormous in your journey towards any technology. Forget AI, just any technology in general.
Okay, well, my shout out to the Nano Banana people because I mean, just in branding alone, it makes me wanna check it out. As you think about your own journey and the joy that you are experiencing in your work, as you think about the kind of consulting and clients that you're working with, you think about the journey that you are in motherhood. Any closing advice when you think about what you're doing for yourself to elevate your human experience or to consistently nurture, your human flourishing? Any closing thoughts or advice for us?
I'll give few thoughts on different aspects about it, right? As I'm going through this journey, this group of women that are going to be on Debbie's podcast, they have been my, I don't know, the posse, the tightness that I felt. Now remember, I was not born and raised here. I came from a very different country, very different culture. This band of women took me in, never judged, never said I smelled, never said that I have an accent. They took me in and made me part of Chicago's inner circle, and that was such a big part of my motherhood. I made friends where I never had friends. I didn't grow up here. I didn't go to school here. So for me to have this amazing woman as my inner circle was fantastic. I learned so much about, yes, motherhood, but about culture, about pop music, about everything that entailed becoming an American. These women were part of my journey. So I am so glad that I got accepted. I got part of this pack, and I am so blessed to be here today with this group of women. So that has been, and the best part about this group, Debbie, is that we have grown up. Our kids have left us, and now we are even better friends. Now we travel together. We have F1 to talk about. We have so much commonness that we've become even better friends now than we were when we were just mom and tot. So that's been a big part of my journey, and I'm looking forward to this tight group of women to be a part of my longer journey in life and being a part of everything that I learn and everything that I can be a part of this lovely group. That has been amazing. On the work front, I learn every day. I'm part of this global community that is ushering in AI in different parts of the world. So glad that I'm part of this organization as well, and then that is growing. And as friendships, I couldn't have asked and I could have been luckier part of this conversation. Thank you for being such an amazing friend.
Oh, and right back at you. And what a great tease for our next conversation. So I'm going to tell the audience it is a special and rare experience, but I wish all of you had a Nahel Gandhi in your community as well. So, Nahel, thank you for sharing the wisdom and just the word of encouragement that we don't have to fear that we're going to lose our humanity as a result of AI and other technology changes, that actually it can enhance when we begin to see a new and reimagined relationship with the mundane and that which is no longer required, and then all of this freedom and capacity to create. And I am so excited that you get to be that on-call bat phone, single, hotline access point. So we'll make sure we include some of your details in the show notes. Thank you for this conversation. Can't wait for the next. And friends who are listening, thank you for being with us today. And be sure to tune in for our next episode. All the best. See you soon, Nehal. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie.
Thanks for being here. If today's conversation sparked something in you, we hope you'll carry it forward with curiosity, compassion, and courage. Subscribe to the show, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who needs it. Until next time, keep exploring what it means to be fully human.